So our speaker today is Megan Pugh. She's a licensed clinical counselor, internal family systems therapist, and a certified somatic experiencing practitioner. She has a private practice in Sebastopol, serving individuals, couples, and groups. She specializes in helping others heal from emotional, physical, and sexual traumas and learn to thrive. She invites anyone wanting to move into a joyous relationship with their self and others to explore their own creative process and deep knowing. She's the author of the book and companion CD, The Spiral of Healing, A Journey Through the Chakras to Awaken Creativity and Body Wisdom. She also offers somatic art therapy trainings. So thank you. Welcome, Megan.
Good. Oh, can you hear me? Oh, good. So I just found out that no cars have been marked on the street, so I think we're good. Okay, so that was a lot. So let's just get up for a moment and just shake, rattle, and roll. Just, woohoo! Just feel your body. Just say hi to your neighbor. Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'm just going to... Is that loud enough? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to invite you to do a little introspection before we start. So just for a moment, sense yourself sitting in your chair. Feel your sits bones under you and how your back is being supported. Notice your feet under you. And just begin to kind of go inside for a moment and just check in with how you're feeling in this particular moment. Just kind of notice, your weight on the chair, letting yourself stabilize and drop in, to yourself. And you might notice, we're in close proximity, that there's somebody maybe on the left of you and the right of you, and just again sense them. Sense your connection to not only where you're sitting, but also to each other in the room. This is an amazing community of people that we share passions, we share work, we share commitment. So just sense that for a moment. Sense that connection that you have not only with yourself and your body and your mind and spirit and emotions, but also with everyone else in the room. And just feel that for a moment. Feel that way in which you are a part of something. You're connected to something, even though you're also connected to yourself, with yourself. And you might just in this moment think about 3 things that you might be noticing. Maybe an emotion or a thought or a sensation in your body. And just kind of check in with that. And it might be different to what I was just saying about experiencing connection. You might be feeling a little disconnected. That's okay. You might have parts of yourself that are curious, wondering what I'm going to talk about. Well, it's a little sort of obvious, but what I'd like you to do is just stay connected to yourself if you can. Stay connected to your body, stay connected to your thoughts and your feelings as we go through this topic, which is, in the state of the world, it's kind of a heavy topic, I think, but there's things worse and there's things better. Okay, so you can come back. Hi. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit that this is, as a way of disclosing, I am connected to this personally, this particular topic. And I've found that in my practice, I get more and more people that have what I call the attributes of someone caught in the narcissistic enchantment. And so that's a big word, and there's lots of, there's a big continuum. So, and this is a huge topic, and we are just going to introduce it today. We're just going to touch in to a few little things. So as I go along, because there's a lot to cover, as I go along, if you have a question, if you'll write it down, but there'll be plenty of time for some interaction. I think of this more as a conversation. I would really, I'm exploring. So I'm just bringing you along to explore with me a little bit today. Okay. So let's see. So the first part is sort of the didactic part, and then I'm going to show you some art. I don't know if you mentioned that I was an art therapist, so one of the ways that I work with the healing of this is through using parts work, or the internal family systems model, using somatic experiencing work, and using art therapy. So, okay, here we go. So what is the narcissistic enchantment? Yeah. So it's a form of developmental trauma, and I know that in my training, developmental trauma was something that was just sort of touched over. You know, we all talk about shock traumas, and, you know, we can sort of relate to those, abuse, death, you know, falls, those kinds of things. Developmental trauma, I call the sort of underground river that flows through everything. And, you know, we all work with people who, you know, have issues, have a car accident, get better, and others don't, okay? Part of the reason they don't is because they're connected to developmental trauma, okay? So the narcissistic enchantment, how I'm defining it, is it's a form of that trauma that puts a child into a state, a trance state, where their cognition is disabled. And it pretty much ensures that the child serves the need of the narcissistic caregiver, okay? So, what is developmental trauma? It's interesting when I did this because anyway, it's behavior that's unconsciously inflicted on infants and children, most often without malicious intent. Parents just don't know. You know, we get more training to cut hair than we do to become a parent, and people just don't know. It's also seemingly ordinary, normal, subtle daily events that involve relational and energetic disconnects between children and parents, okay? So that's one end of the continuum. The other end, of course, is you know, big dysfunction in the family, big, you know, abuse and things like that. Okay, so it's a big field, right? Okay. So I wanted to bring in this theory, Stephen Porges' theory, to sort of just explain how, even though we talk about this, it's really happening in the nervous system, in the body. We don't have control over this. This isn't about will. This isn't about, for someone caught in the narcissistic enchantment, they can't will themselves out of this, okay? It's really caught in our hardwiring, how we respond to our environment, okay? And we also mix that up with our own internal cues. So he talks about that, you know, we look to one another for guidance. That's who we are. We're interrelational beings, right? We're always working with each other. Okay. It influences our autonomic nervous system in 3 ways. And most people think about it in 2 ways, and so what he's known for is the 3rd way, okay? So this is the vagus nerve. It runs up and down here, okay? It's happening in here. You know, when something happens to you, we all contract, right? Well, this is where most of us hold this, okay? Then there's other places in our body where we contract, okay? But when we're in the ventral part of the vagus nerve, that's our social connectivity. That's what I was doing with you the first thing, right? To connect to yourself, to connect to each other. That's the more social part of the parasympathetic part of the nervous system, which is the resting state. Well, I don't know what that is. Okay, music in the background. So we have, you know, hopefully when we eat, when we meditate, we get put into the parasympathetic part of our nervous system. We get into the resting state, okay? That's the social connective part of our nervous system, okay? When we sense danger, we temporarily disconnect from our social system, and we narrow our focus. We stop paying attention. We narrow our focus to kind of tune in, where's the danger, right? We're hunting for where the danger is. And if we locate it, we can do a couple of things. We can flee it. We can protect against it. We can temporarily freeze, okay? But what happens if it escalates to helplessness? Okay, which is what happens in most traumas, especially with young children who have no power in a situation, and where their caregiver is often their source of danger, is that we dissociate, we disconnect from social relationships, and we collapse. And this is now, we're back in the parasympathetic, but it's an override. So in other words, it looks like we're resting. It looks like we have no energy. But in fact, we have all this threat energy, and we're disconnected from ourselves and from each other, okay? So in the trauma world, we talk about dissociation as an incredible resource. Probably the best one we've ever found. It's like, yoo-hoo, that's what I say. If that's what you do to survive, it's a really wonderful resource, okay? All right, so these are the psychological implications of disorganized attachment. And I'm sure if you don't notice it in yourself, you notice it in your clients, okay? Difficulty learning healthy ways to self-soothe, difficulty opening up or seeking help, which is a real catch-22 because you want help, but it's terrifying. You want help, okay? Difficulty trusting people, forming relationships, difficulty managing stress. You can display signs of narcissism, like shallow emotions, grandiosity, contemptuous attitude, also vulnerability, which is the other side of that. And mostly we see the world as an unsafe place. And this is an amazing figure. 80% of abused children have disorganized attachment. So what that means is everything is crazy making, right? And our general population, 20 to 40%, have disorganized, okay? All right. So what I'm calling the object of narcissism is a child who has been at the effect of narcissistic behaviors, okay? And there's that big continuum, right? Okay, so someone coined the name narky object, okay? So I'm one, yeah. So narky object, it's responses to being parentified, and there's two ones. One is the compliant response, and these are the qualities. Never feels good enough, made to feel ungrateful, shamed, or guilty, takes care of others almost exclusively, constantly alert to pleasing others, conforming, feels responsible for feelings of others, self-deprecating, seldom gets their own needs met. Anybody in the room have any of those? Okay. All right, here's the rebellion withdrawal response. Someone who avoids being, oh, you know what? Did I skip over a, I did. Oh, well. Okay, I want to show you it. There, no, where is it? It was such a good slide. Okay, never mind. So mostly the rebellion withdrawal response to someone who is an narky object is to avoid everything, okay? So I don't know if you know people who just don't do their life, right? That's probably a good one. They're fighting to stay separate, general dissatisfaction, and overwhelmed by others, okay? So.
Can I ask a question?
Quickly.
It seems like, I'll just own it. I'm the cold part of that, but every once in a while I get rebellious and
Yeah.
so it's a mix.
Oh yeah, we do all of it, okay? But some people have more tendencies than others. Like I have a client who is an older gentleman, and he really struggles in the push-pull of wanting to make his life happen, but really can't handle the energy, so he pulls back, that kind of a thing. So yeah. All right, so these come from Heller and LaPierre, which is their book on healing developmental trauma. And these are the core needs we have as humans, right? Connection, attunement, trust, autonomy, love, sexuality. When we have those flowing, we're in pretty good shape, right? But if you have to survive a narcissistic relationship, you have to disconnect, right? You have to foreclose your ability to connect to yourself. What you have to connect to is what they want you to connect to, what they need you to connect to, right? You have to foreclose your own awareness, in other words, the antennae that we have that come from our fight-flight, ability to tune in and tune into your environment, okay? It's out here. It's stuck out here. And we have to give up this because we can't have both and survive as young children, okay? forecloses trust, forecloses authentic expression, and forecloses love and heart connection, forecloses sexuality and the integration of sexuality with love. Big words. These are all really big words. I'm moving fast. Okay, so again, this is what they do to survive. Gives up existence, disconnects, becomes invisible, gives up own needs, gives up direct expression of independence, rejects, avoids rejection by perfecting themselves. So does anybody have the thing like, I've got to do it perfectly? Yeah, okay. Do you know there's no such thing as perfect? I mean, I didn't. I just assumed there was a perfect and I was not there. That's all. Never going to get there, wasn't going to happen, right? Okay. So I want to talk just for a minute about how I work with this by just talking about internal family systems model for a moment, because the thing that I've noticed about the way that you combat narcissism is to help someone move into connectivity with self and others. Okay, that's sort of the bottom line. And so IFS allows a balance within the system. It helps a person differentiate between who they really are and the parts of themselves that have had to come online that are strategies that we've had to do to survive, okay? Like everything I just said, right? They had to disconnect, drop out, okay? To help the system allow the self to lead. While the parts provide input, they respect the leadership of self. Okay, self I'm referring to is that part of ourselves that witnesses and does not have an agenda, that is all-encompassing, that's calm and creative and compassionate, okay? Not just for others, because we're all trained to do that really well, but for ourselves, okay? And to allow all the parts to exist. And this is the big piece that I want to talk about. When you're in the enchantment, this is the opposite. You are not allowed to have any of yourself exist. So part of the healing is to start bringing those parts online, even the hard ones. In fact, those are the ones you have to start with. The difficult ones, the strategies, the protections, the addictions, all of those. So it takes this is a really different way of viewing addictions, for instance. It does not say you need to get rid of an addiction. It doesn't exile the addiction. It invites relationship with it. Not with the act of the addiction, but the aspect of ourselves that feels the need to be in addiction, to do some kind of addictive behavior, okay? So these are the strengths of the IFS, is that clients provide the material. The goal is to always bring compassion and curiosity, not to change anything. Focuses on strengths and the undamaged core of the self, and the ability of parts to shift into positive roles. So there's an assumption in this model that even our protective parts, like dissociation, like the critic, like the pusher parts of ourselves, that are always on us, actually don't want to be doing that. They're only doing it because they don't think we're here. They think they're the only ones there and they have to protect this system. So once we start making contact with them and letting them know, no, I'm actually here and I can hold this with you, then they start shifting into more positive roles. Also, in this model, the client is definitely a co-therapist in the room. And the IFS language is totally non-pathological. It does not pathologize anything. In fact, it invites all the different behaviors that we do pathologize in this work to get more curious about it as opposed to being judgmental of it, okay? All right, so art therapy. Why does art therapy work? Well, because here's the thing. When you are raised as an object of narcissism, you don't really have much sense of who you are. You have a great sense of who you're supposed to be, right? Of the model that was given to you, of the roles, the false self, the roles that you are supposed to play. And you're really good at those because that's how you got goodies, right? That's how you got love and connection and belonging, okay? But when it comes to actually figuring out who I am, what makes me tick, what do I want to do, and starting that deciphering, like think about being in brambles, right? And you're trying to pick these things to get out of the way so that you can kind of clear a path to feel who you are. Art is an amazing way to do it because it does two things. it's your art. It's your unique experience. It's nobody else's. It's not your false self. It is what it is, okay? And when we work with it enough that we cannot judge it, then we can start seeing that it's full of gifts for us, full of information. And then the other piece is that at the same time that it helps with individuation, that sense of my own uniqueness, it also connects me to the creative life force of life, right? So there's a whole integration, a whole union going on at the same time that there's an individuation. The other piece about art is it lets you have a hard copy of what you're experiencing. So have you ever had this feeling where you're like, something's going on and it just feels so big because it's in your head and you can't get distance from it, and you just wish you could just move it over there, right? Well, that's what art does. Art lets you scribble it out there, make an image of it, and then suddenly you're not disconnected from it, but you're a little bit unblended enough that you can maybe begin a relationship with it. And it's really powerful because it's happening out here in hard copy. Okay. And then also art shifts our awareness from thoughts and feelings to sensations, because as you do art and engage in the art making, it brings on the parasympathetic that I was talking about before, part of the nervous system. Okay. So let's see what else I've got here. Okay, how to heal. That was fast. I did that fast. So any questions so far?
Yeah, do you have a handout?
Well, you're going to, yeah, you can get all of this. It'll be on the website. So, how to heal. This is my, this was a fun list to make, actually. Okay, first thing is about baby steps, and I cannot emphasize enough, how we have to help ourselves and our people that we work with to really value baby steps, because we're all, those of us that are healing trauma are like, let's get this done. Let's get this over with. Please get this out of my body. I don't want to feel this way anymore. So we have to slow the process down enough that a person can cherish a little movement. And the other reason to cherish that movement, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is because we have to anchor it for them, because there's no anchoring of who they are and their healing and what they can do. There's only anchored in their body what has been expected of them. Okay, so cherish the 51% rule. Okay, so this is something that I made up a while back when I realized that all of us are addicted to perfection, and that we think that there is sort of a place we're supposed to get to, okay? So the only place you have to get to is 51% of healing. Okay, that doesn't sound so bad, does it? 51%. It's like you climb up the mountain and you just get a little bit over the top and the rest is downhill, right? You don't have to be there. There is no there, okay? But where there is a certain kind of 100th monkey idea, right? A certain amount accumulates of your awareness and your connection to yourself, to your body awareness. What I mean by connection is like things stick. Like it makes sense to me. Okay. When I get enough of that, then the rest is just kind of like, you're still working, but it has a different flavor. It has a different feeling, okay? So understand reverb and its relationship to progress. Okay, so reverb is one of my most favorite things. When there's something that you really want to do, but you have this prohibitiveness about doing it, like it's not okay to do it. Somewhere, you've got a part of you that feels like, ooh, I can't do that. And then when you do it, when you actually get up the courage to do it, and you sort of cross that line, then you get this like, oh my God, why did I do that? What are people going to think of me? This, do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Yes? Okay, good. I call it reverb, okay? And it is actually a great thing to have reverb. Most people think it's horrible because they drop into the content of that voice that says to them, oh God, look what you did. You shouldn't have, you're too big, you're too much, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, what are people going to think? I mean, it just goes on, right? I'm sure you've got your own version of it. But what I say about reverb is like, yoo-hoo, woohoo, okay? Reverb is really great because it means that you actually didn't stop yourself from doing the thing you needed to do. You're just having reverb. It's like a good sign, right? It's like a signpost, okay? Okay, learn to handle activation in the mind fields. Okay, so one of the ways we protected ourselves as children from doing what is natural, right? Naturally having feelings, responses to our environment, naturally being angry, naturally being sad, naturally being joyous. If that was not allowed and you had to be what was expected of you to be, how are you going to stop yourself from doing that? It's natural. It's like, have you ever been around little kids? It's like uninhibited, natural, right? So we have to develop huge protective patterning, which I call the minefield, okay? Which is, we tell ourselves it's so scary to walk through that I don't. So we stay on this side of the minefield, okay? So most people go, oh yeah, it's too much, and because they think they have to dive in. So I just say, what about you just stick your toe in there, and you feel the cold river. Feel it for a moment, okay? And then maybe you get your whole foot in there. And next thing you know, you're up to your knees, right? You're handling the level of activation in your system. The other way to handle activation is to increase your resourcing, okay? So I'm sort of subliminally talking about that, because all of this is about resourcing, okay? Which is increase your connection to yourself, to who you really are, to what is important to you, to what you value, to what your strengths are, right? When you do that, then you can tolerate when things get activated, like the reverb. That's an activation, okay? So define what it means for clients to step outside the enchantment. Normalize going slow to build somatic awareness. Okay, so what I mean by this is that, when you have, just think for a moment about a really wonderful experience you've had, like a cherished moment, maybe it's just a walk in nature that you loved, or an incredible massage, or a moment of love with someone, or a child being born, whatever it is, okay? Just notice it for a minute. And notice what you feel. And notice how you feel it. Where do you know? How do you know you're feeling happy? What does your body tell you? Anybody? Just, yeah. Of release in the heart chakra, right. So there's an expansion, a relaxation. Yeah, there's kind of a smile you get, right? It's a somatic imprint. It's living in your body. This memory is living in your body. It's not just a thought or a feeling. There's actually a way in which our bodies have imprinted it, okay? For someone who's living in the enchantment, their imprints are only about the enchantment. Okay, that means that whatever is being asked of them, they're over here giving themselves up, right? Don't have any connection to who they really are. They are in relationship to what someone's projection of who they're supposed to be, and they're acting it out. Okay, that's the enchantment. So how do you help someone to step outside of it when they have no somatic awareness of anything outside of it, right? So that's our job, is to define what does it feel like when you're not doing for somebody just because what you think you're supposed to be doing for someone. This is very activating for people. I just want to say, it's like extraordinarily activating. Like, I have someone, for instance, he comes in the room, and he spends maybe 5 minutes just acclimating to the room, right? He's checking things out, he's looking at colors. He's getting here because his mode of living is dissociation. It's really helpful for him. He can function really well in the world. But he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to come into therapy and dissociate. He wants to work on stuff. So he walks into the room and he spends time just kind of looking around. And then I say to him, and what are you noticing going on in your body when you're doing that? Like, he knows he's hovering. So when you're hovering, what do you notice in your body? I'm like trying to get a bridge to, this is who you are, this is what you're feeling, and let's anchor it in the body, okay? Also, it's not easy to step outside the enchantment if you don't know what lives outside the enchantment. So there's like a risk factor. So, what they say about and what Stephen Porges says too, but what every trauma person says is safety, safety, safety. Safety is the only thing that matters. You don't have, it doesn't matter if you know 100 million different ways of doing something. What matters is that you create safety, that a person senses safety. And that's what we work on a lot. What does that mean to you? What would that feel like if you were safe? If you felt safe in yourself? What would it actually feel like? How would you sense it? Tell me what's going on in your belly. Okay, and then what's your imagination of how it could be if you felt safe? Well, it might be relaxed. Okay, so now we have an imagination. It's not in the body yet, but it's kind of hovering, right? So we work with bringing it into the body. Okay, connecting with young parts and gaining empathy for the full range of feelings, including frustration, anger, at not being taught self-reliance. Okay, this is really important because we don't want to feel these icky feelings, especially like frustration. We really don't want to feel frustration. We don't want to feel anger because we don't know how to do things because no one ever taught us. You know, it's not like there's something wrong with a person that's caught in the enchantment. There's nothing wrong with you. Absolutely nothing wrong with you. You have not been taught certain things. There's a whole bit of learning that's been left out. And that is, you know, when you see a little kid and they come up to you and they go, oh, look, here's my picture. And you go, oh, that's so good. Oh, you're such a good, you know, or wow, you do that. Tell me about that. We're paying attention to this little person. We're giving that person information about who they are. And we're helping them. Like, you know, if a little kid's learning to walk or learning to ride a bike or whatever, you're teaching them, right? You're showing them, and you're encouraging them. And when they fall, you go, yeah, everybody falls. It's okay, get up again, you know? We're filling in. A person who's in the enchantment didn't get any of that. They were expected to know how to do everything. And when they didn't, they were chastised for it, they were rejected for it, they were upset. Because the need of the narcissist is to soothe by having the connected part, that other person, satisfy their need so they can relax, they can soothe because they're so activated because they have no core, no connection deep inside of themselves, right? And that's what we learned. We learned how not to be connected to ourselves, just like our parents were. Okay. Am I making sense here? Okay.
Say that last part one more time, please.
What we learned, we did learn something, of course. What we learned was to be disconnected the way our parents were disconnected. We learned not to value connectivity to self, but to a projected sense of what we needed to be or what we sensed they needed us to be, right? I mean, the best example I can give you is when I was 3 years old, I dove off a high diving board in front of 200 people. 3 years old. I have 2 daughters. I barely let them in the water at 3, and I was high diving off diving in a huge pool of 200 people. Okay, a child doesn't do that, right? Okay. So this is an important, have I done, no, okay, so this one is help a child develop relationships between themselves and the part that's caught in the enchantment. See, we don't like those parts that are caught in the enchantment, the parts that don't know how to do anything, the parts that are like frustrated, the parts that are scared, that think it's not okay or not safe. And our job is to help a person get connected to those parts and to learn how to acknowledge for ourselves small steps of self-reliance. And it's really tricky as therapists, I can tell you, because not only was I trained to take care of people, right, as a child, but as a therapist, I'm also trained with some crazy idea to fix people, right? And so it's like I have to keep my mouth shut, and get them to struggle to do this instead of me telling them what to do, because I want to tell them what to do, because that soothes me. Then I'm a good therapist. Then I'm successful, right? But if you really want a person to heal from this, you have to get them to enjoy their struggle, if you can say such a thing. Enjoy your struggle, and at least accept the struggle. Maybe not enjoy it, but accept it. sort of get behind it, get curious about it at least, right? Something like that. Okay. So next one is becoming aware of some somatic embodiment with healthy mirroring. This is what we do as therapists all the time, right? We're mirroring, mirroring, mirroring. But what we forget to do is we forget to say, wow, that was really great that you did that. How do you know you're doing that? I mean, how do you feel in your own body about that? So we keep self-referencing. Because remember, a narky object is looking out to get the goodies. And our job is to help them turn this so that it's flexible. Because we need it out for danger, but we need to stay connected to ourselves at the same time. It's super important, okay? Okay, my favorite, dismantle the Teflon response by shifting safety from outside to inside. So I've been saying all along, there's nothing sticks, right? So we have to, that's a protector part, okay? Nothing sticks. I can't accept that because I'm terrified if I accept that, then I'm definitely stepping outside the enchantment, right? And listen, I wrote, the title of this thing was something to avoid annihilation, okay? That's really how it feels, okay? Let's just say the truth about this. Healing from narcissistic enchantment can feel like death. It's terrifying. It's full of terror, real terror, embodied terror, nervous system terror, right? And that's, I'm so sorry to say, I don't know what happened to my slide, but there was a slide of a child, I don't know why it's not there, that is, when a child is scared, they run towards their connection. And if their connection is their source of terror and fear, what do? It's like crazy making, right? Our natural tendency is to connect, and the person that we're trying to connect to is totally unsafe, abusive, scary. All we can do is disconnect. That's all we can do. Disconnect from everything. Dissociate, right? What else? There's nothing else we can do. It's terrifying, okay? Okay, embracing healthy narcissism. So this is where you go, get in the, I call it getting in the equation, right? It's fine to care for other people, but you have to be in the equation. I have a client who is a single mom of 3 teenage daughters. And they are so entitled, these girls, because she was raised in this, that she gets no help. So now she's kind of the martyr. It's really awful because she's working her butt off, and there's no appreciation, and it's like that. It's like she needs to get in the equation. She needs to be able to tolerate saying, I count as much as you do. I'm as important as you are. Okay? That sounds like an easy thing. It is not an easy thing. So that's part of what we have to do is help. This one is an interesting one. This is something I learned from my own daughters, because I could never do that. My mode of operation was, if I'm going to connect to myself, I disconnect from everybody else, right? That's the only way I can do it. I cannot do both. I either totally give myself up, or I connect to myself, but then, like I don't have friends from high school, college. You know what I mean? You just don't do that. You just move along, and you stay connected, okay? So learning how to stay connected to self and other at the same time is awesome. I mean, I finally learned how to do it, and it's a really wonderful feeling to have that. And then learning to handle the projections between client and therapist, okay? Because, like I've already said, we like to fix, we like to know, we have agendas. As much as we want to say we don't, we do. And really, that's why I love IFS, because it's constantly reminding me to get into this part of myself that doesn't have an agenda, that just is able to acknowledge and honor what is going on. So, these are some of the processes that I do. We image specific parts, especially what are called the protectors, and then the exiles, the parts that the protectors protect, these hurt parts inside of ourselves. And we have to spend a lot of time with the protectors, really getting them on our side, getting connection to them, because they're helpful, They've been doing the job that we've needed to do. But you see, because we were disconnected from ourselves, they were doing it. So now we're reconnecting to ourselves. We have to work with them. And then we do parts mapping, we image polarities, and we discover what the agenda is under it. We connect sensations, images, behaviors, thoughts, and feelings with parts. We sense our relationship of self to parts. The trailhead process is we start with something that you're feeling, and then it takes you to the core issue. We identify inner children by doing doll making, externalizing to bring compassion. We identify parts with legacy burdens by working with the mothers and the father line. So I have weekends called Healing the Mother Line, Healing the Father Line, and they're set up to help a person, especially who has this, to recognize what isn't theirs and what is not theirs, okay? So the stuff coming down from the mother and father lines doesn't really belong to us. Our response, our reaction to it is ours. So it's about differentiating, all the time differentiating. And then I love to use Byron Katie's 4 questions, because people who are really caught in a thought that's really driving them, like a pusher thought or a really strong critical thought, it's really helpful to ask, is it true? And can you always know it's true? And how in your body do you sense that thought? And who would you be without that thought? And then we shift it, we do like a turnaround. So these are the things that I do, and I think what's coming next are the art. So I wanted to stop. Yeah.
Can you say more about the turnaround?
The turnaround? Okay, so if a person has a thought of, I'm never good enough. Okay. So you go through the questions, right? How do you, is it true? Yeah, it feels true. How do you, is it absolutely true? Can you say for sure? Not really, because you can't say for sure about anything, okay? How does it feel? You again get that somatic response. How does it feel to feel like I'm never good enough, right? And who would you be without that thought? That's an interesting question. Who would I be without the thought that I'm not good enough? Huh. Free, relaxed, kind of like, oh, whatever. Okay, so the turnaround is to come up with the opposite statement that is true. So we do a lot of things with, in our culture with positive statements. What are they called? Affirmations. But affirmations, okay, especially when you're working with this kind of level of trauma, they will not stick if they're not real. Okay, so you cannot say the opposite is I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm fine. I'm plenty, right? I'm enough. When you don't feel it, okay? So the turnaround might be something like, I'm learning to accept that there's a part of me that doesn't feel good enough. That leaves the whole rest of you feeling fine, right? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like that. Okay, yeah.
Can you say more about number 12 from the last slide, as these clients are pulling for us to give them suggestions?
Well, okay, so if I'm trained to be, to get my sense of reality from an authority figure, then I need them to tell me I'm okay. I need to check in with them. Now, we all need that. I mean, that is a human thing, right? That interpersonal piece that we all have with each other, okay? I'm talking about to the exclusion of, do I know that for myself? Okay, so my job is to say back, it looks like you really did something good for yourself. Can you sense that? Can you, does that make sense to you? How do you know that that's a good thing? See what I'm saying? Where even though it's being projected on us that we know the answers, that we are important, that we're the ones who are going to tell them that they exist and that they're okay. There's a both and. There's a, yeah, that's part of my job, but my other part of my job is to help them get that they also know that. And how do they know that? See what I mean? Does that make sense? Anybody else? Imaging polarities. Okay, polarities are two parts that are in direct opposition to each other. I'm going to show you in the art. But basically, a polarity would be not necessarily. It would be more like
I want to do something, I don't want to do something.
yeah, like I really want to take that training, but there's a part of me that knows I'll never figure it out. I'm not smart enough, right? So you have, okay, well, I'll tell you my big polarity, okay, because I can't do it in the abstract, okay? My polarity was hide, be under the radar, don't be seen. That keeps me safe. And then I have another part that says, keep moving, because if you stand still, you're a target. Polarity, right? Does that make sense? So it's like crazy making. Hide, stay still, versus no, don't stay still, right? Now, funny enough, in a polarity, both of these protective strategies are protecting the same part, this vulnerable part that is caught in this experience. It's like I'm lost, I don't know who I am, I don't know where I am, basically, that's the feeling. I don't know how to move, I don't know how to get out of this, I'm trapped. It's like a catch-22. Does that make that clear? Okay. Anything else before we move along?